So yesterday I recorded all of my sessions, and when I did that, let's see, Dave is asking, is this in our Google Classroom? It is not. I just pasted the links in the chat that's got the presentation. You don't have to worry about doing the pre-survey, but the presentation link you should be able to copy and paste into your browser. But anyway, I am recording, and so what I did yesterday is I put the recordings into a unlisted playlist in YouTube. And so I will be going into PowerSchool today and sending out links to those recordings. If you're interested in watching this back for any reason, you can access it there. All right, so hyperdoc defined. Now, these are not new. They've actually been around for quite a while, and they are just called hyperdoc. So it's a digital document like a Google Doc, where all the components of a learning cycle have been pulled together into a central hub. 2 points that I think are important here. One, it's all in one place. That is what makes hyperdocs so perfect for not only just a blended classroom, but remote learning, because everything is packaged in one location. Two, the important point there is the learning cycle. So you should follow a learning cycle. And when I say learning cycle, I think about the strategic teaching, where you are looking at I do, we do, you do, that kind of thing. Imagine it in a more self-sufficient package for a student. So it's going to give you a lot of opportunities to engage the student, for them to do some work. Possibly even hyperdocs can have some whole class parts to them, but overall they can be used for remote learning or self-paced learning. And so the term hyperdoc was actually termed by Lisa Highfield, Kelly Hilton, and Sarah Landis, and they are the writers of the Hyperdoc Handbook. And this is the link to that book. I personally do not have this book, but the website that they created from this book is a wonderful resource for hyperdocs. And I have linked so many things, like this picture is linked, that it took me out to their website. So when you're describing a hyperdoc, when I describe a hyperdoc to someone, I say, remember the web quest. So if you've been around education for any length of time, you may remember the good old web quest. I remember having to do one of those back in the day when I was in college, and that was like the technology innovation, was sending kids on a web quest, which is essentially hyperlinking a document and having them go to different sites. So it was kind of a search for stuff, and it's bigger and better. So a hyperdoc is not the same as a web quest. It's not just taking your worksheet and digitizing it. So keep that in mind. A lot of what I have seen in the world of remote learning, or even in one-to-one environments, is a lot of teachers just taking a PDF, taking a worksheet, digitizing it, adding blanks that students could type into, and feeling like they were truly integrating technology. It was boring as a paper pencil worksheet. It is still boring as a worksheet they have to type into. As a matter of fact, they hate it more because they struggle with keyboarding. But anyway, it is just a lot more than that. It's more engaging. So I'm going to click on this link. These are some really good guidelines on creating a hyperdoc. So when you're starting from scratch, and even when you are looking to remix one, and we're going to talk about that, you want to make sure that you have identified all of these steps. First of all, just like any good lesson plan, you're going to identify your objectives. Decide the title, the overview of the lesson. Is there an essential or a driving question? I think that is so important in what we do, is that big idea or that driving question. And then those learning objectives, particularly ones that are student friendly. And so that is kind of your first objective there, is to make sure that you are clear on what those things are and that your students are clear. Number two, create a cycle of learning. And this is where looking at examples of hyperdocs is going to be very important to you. Decide what model you're going to use. Now, your particular school district may have a lesson plan model that they require that you use. I know there are several districts that use like the 5 E's that are down here, or they want you to look at DOK specifically, or TPAC, or SAMR. Or if you're like, I don't know what any of that means, then they may give you the freedom to structure your lesson however you want. They may want you to look at that strategic teaching method. So whatever the learning cycle is, you need to think about that, because a good hyperdoc will follow a learning cycle. And so those are some examples. There is one that's kind of called the hyperdoc model. The integration of the 4 C's, that's collaboration, creativity, communication, and critical thinking. I used to call it the 5 C's. I always added the 5th C, which was curation of your resources. That cycle of learning should have assessment built into it. That doesn't mean it has to have a big test at the end or a big project at the end. It should be small assessments throughout and checkpoints, and then an opportunity for reflection. And to be honest, I'm terrible at that part, especially with high school, where I'm like, we got to move, we got to get to the next thing. I didn't always give time for my students to reflect. And I really regret that, because their reflection often helped me direct that lesson that was coming next, and also relook at the lesson that I used, because there are a lot of times when we think students understand why we're doing something, and when they give us an evaluation or they reflect, they let us know that, yeah, that was not the case at all. Number 3, package the learning. And that's kind of where we're focusing today. What type of hyperdoc will you create? Now, I've got a slide in here that talks about some of the tools that are possibilities. But if you know how to use Docs or Word in Microsoft, you essentially know most of what you need for a hyperdoc. So it can be a document that can be housed anywhere, like Google Classroom. It can be a slide deck, and that one probably takes a little more time. You can be more creative with it. And then there are other things that can be considered a hyperdeck, as long as they can link outside of whatever you're using to package the learning. Then you need to decide on your workflow. You have to have a grasp of certain technologies to be able to support the workflow of a hyperdoc. And I say this, and the people that were in some of my sessions yesterday and last week will tell you that it doesn't matter how much you think you know about sharing permissions and things like that in Google. Everybody screws it up sometimes. So you've got to be sure that you know how to share something. Is it shared with the right permissions? When people finish whatever it is you're going to have them finish, where does it go from there? And so establishing that workflow. So what will you utilize to push the work to students? Will it be Google Classroom? Will the document link to things that are automatically shared with you because of, say, Google Classroom? Is it going to live on sites? Are they going to be creating some kind of portfolio somewhere else? So how are you going to get it to them? And then how are you going to collect it? And then what's your process of feedback for students? And so I listed a few things there: Google Classroom, Microsoft Teams, Seesaw, Remind. All of these are tools that can be used for this. Do you have to have a working knowledge of all of those things? Well, of course not. Can you utilize all of those things to do this? Yes. So I know that sometimes we feel like we're kind of burnt out with how we're sending messages out to students and to parents. But as a parent, I will tell you, I'm okay with you sending it through Remind. I'm okay with you putting it also into Google Classroom, and I'm okay with getting an email, so that all three places let me know where to access something. And then number 5, it has to be engaging. Like I said, just because you digitize a worksheet doesn't make it engaging. So your content has to be engaging. Use color. Our students are highly visual. I mean, I already mentioned to you earlier, my 10 and 13-year-old, if given the choice, would sit and watch dumb YouTube videos of people making slime, playing other video games, or like unboxing a toy. So they are highly engaged in other media. So we got to do whatever. So different fonts, page colors, tables to make things look organized, the ability to merge cells within those tables, adding images, leaving negative space. That is something that I really had to work on when I would create worksheets or create something for my students. Especially in the analog world of making copies, I would crunch as much as I could onto a piece of paper to save copies. In the digital world, you don't have to do that. Leave negative space for them to process, to take notes, to think, and for readability. Customize your links. You can use URL shorteners. You can have links that go out to a variety of things. You should be able to link to a website, a document, a slideshow, a map. There are so many things you can link to, and that's the beauty of hyperdocs. I think that's really why they took off. And then you don't have to use a lot of technology tools, but they are really what is going to drive this hyperdoc and make it engaging, is those tools you use to support that hyperdoc. You can easily use one tool to package your hyperdoc, and that is all you use. But most of the really good engaging ones use at least one more major tool to get student feedback or to allow them to create something. So I know that I spent a lot of time on that, but I want you to understand it's not just dumping stuff into a digital document. It really is a process of planning. It is a lot of work on the front end, but it is rewarding because of what you get on the back end of this assignment. So like I said, first decide your objectives, essential question, and the why behind what they're doing. Decide your learning cycle, and then determine your package and how you're going to engage and assess your students. All right, so what is the learning cycle? There are several of them. A simple one is explore, explain, apply. That's probably the most simplistic one, but that doesn't mean there's just a single step in each one of those. So if you are sending your students out to explore a topic, it's going to be several links or videos. That's where they front load their learning. So if you've heard of the flipped classroom experience, that's what you would have them do, is that you would front load your content in the explore portion. This is also where you would have students construct their own learning. So you would have them come up with what they think would happen. You'll show them videos. You will have them go and read an article or read a poem or a story, and have them come up with what they think would be the end of the story, or what's their hypothesis from this. So that exploration phase is very important, particularly for my science, my math teachers. Anything where there's preconceptions that can happen, the explore phase is perfect for that. The explain phase is where the teacher would come in if you're in an actual in-person situation. The explain phase sometimes is a whole class experience where you can have them into groups, or where they collaborate with other students and they are learning the content. The explain phase may be where you have a note-taking document or a video explaining maybe what their misconceptions were earlier. This is great for you as the teacher to create some of those explainer videos. So let me just take a pause for a minute, and I'm going to stop sharing my screen for just a moment. Hey, hello. So I just wanted to take a minute and ask, how many of you during this quarantine remote learning time created videos for your students? Either screen capture videos or videos of you teaching a lesson. If you did, you can put yes in the chat, or you can give a reaction of a thumbs up. So how many of you had to create those kinds of videos teaching your students? I know that I had so many teachers reach out to me like, my hair's on fire. What the heck? How do I do this? It may have just been a simple use your phone and teach to your phone. I know some people use some screencast software. So if you did this and you don't mind sharing in the chat, drop for me what you used. If you use a particular tool, if it was just your phone or your tablet or your computer, or if you use something else, let us know what you use. I asked this because that was one of the #1 questions that I answered, was how do I do this? Once I've done it, how do I get it to my students? Where does it live? It's too big to email. How do I, there were so many people trying to navigate these waters. I think that it is good in some ways that it forced us to do this. I learn a lot when I watch myself on video. I hate recording these Zoom sessions. Like, I don't want to watch them back. And so it is it's very telling when we see ourselves on video. We realize that it was a lot of work on us in the front end of making those videos. But I will say I had some teachers tell me that they are kind of excited that they have some of these videos and that they're going to utilize them next year and put them somewhere to help students who didn't understand a concept, even when they're face-to-face in the classroom. And so I do think that that has opened up a door for teachers. So I'm looking at some of your responses. I see Screencastify, QuickTime, your phone. Let's see. Oh, I love somebody's using Edpuzzle. That's a great tool. I actually should probably do a session on Edpuzzle. Just your computer, your phone. Google Classroom is where you put some of these. Flipgrid. And so then I also see sending home just packets. I'm going to be honest, where my students go to school, majority of the teachers did packets. And I was trying to help the ones who were trying to do something else, but they were scrambling just like many of us. And so they did some Skype sessions with students. And once I taught a teacher how to do her own YouTube channel, she was able to do some readings to the students and they could access those videos. And she was like, I feel like the most techie, famous person ever. And so I think all of us really stretched ourselves in that world as we were kind of trying to figure this out. So I will tell you that it may not be easy, but I'm hoping that it was a great learning experience for us, because I do think it's significant for students to not just see explanation videos from Khan Academy. I like for students to see their own teacher explaining a concept. So a hyperdoc might be an opportunity for you to utilize some of those videos within this hyperdoc. And that last part of that short learning cycle is apply. They want to apply that knowledge. So you're going to ask them to then do something with what they explored, what you explained, and then, apply that knowledge to either create something, collaborate with other students and do something. And this should allow student creativity. A lot of times you may see hyperdocs in the form of menus or choice boards. I think those are really effective, especially when the application part gives students a choice. And then I saw one example where, and this was one of my colleagues, Carol Foster, who did a fabulous webinar on using Google Forms in innovative ways. And she highlighted a teacher that had students choose a topic. And then once they chose the topic, the form led them to kind of the rest of that hyperdoc, which led them through that topic. Once they submitted it, they had to go back into that form and choose the next topic. So they had a whole list of topics to choose from, and they're all becoming experts on multiple topics, but they have a choice. So I really loved that. Here's another one that is a good learning cycle. You start with engage. I like this one because I always was a big fan in my classroom of hooking the students. So I believe like starting off your lessons with a video or something to hook the students, or I'm a weirdo that would like dress up and do some weird skit to start off the unit to hook them and get them interested. You know, as an English teacher, I have several costumes that I've dressed up, especially when doing the Crucible or Macbeth. That was my favorite because I would put on my witch hat and do, you know, double toil and trouble. I'm a former theater girl, so of course I like to dress up. And so anything to engage your students and get them hooked. Then you've got that same explore and explain and apply in the center. And then that next piece was share. And I think that's important because it gives them a bigger audience than just the teacher. So when they have an opportunity to share what they've learned with their peers or with a wider audience like parents or the community, it makes a big difference. And then that last piece is the reflect piece. So remote learning right now, is it engaging? Do students have a voice and do students have a choice? Unfortunately, that is not always the case. So when it comes to remote learning, like I said, our hair was on fire and we were just like, get some stuff out there to the kids. Typically, they didn't have a choice or a voice in what they were learning. They just had to complete it. And, you know, as a parent, I'm just going to be real. At a certain point, I'm just looking at my kids going, just mark something. You know, and so honestly, I know my teacher friends understand that that was kind of where we were all at. We're grateful that this happened toward the end of the year so that we didn't feel like we were just going crazy. But that is kind of how parents felt and how teachers and students felt. Just get it done. So what tool do you use for hyperdocs? If you are a PowerPoint person, Microsoft person, you can use Microsoft Word and you can use PowerPoint. If you use those tools, you just have to have online access to those. So whatever digital format you're able to deliver it in, you know, it can't just be something that you can only print. It would have to be something that you could put out there online. Many of my schools that are using Office tools are using Office 365, and that allows you to publish those to the web so that they are hyperlinked. Adobe Spark, this is not something I have a lot of experience with. I have some of my colleagues that are very big fans of the Adobe Spark suite of tools, and so that is another option. Canva is one of my favorite graphic tools. That's one of the tools, if people say they only have about 15 minutes for me to teach them something, I typically teach them Canva. It makes you look like the greatest graphic designer ever, and Canva is a great way to create something and publish it. ThingLink. ThingLink is almost like the pre-hyperdoc. ThingLink is something where it's an image and you can hyperlink out. But I think ThingLink is going to also have to be hyperlinked to something where your students could write or complete some information. And I think that particular tool is not free, or it's very limited on the free account. And then all the Google. Google Forms is a great way for a hyperdoc, particularly if you're looking at sectioning off your hyperdoc so that once they complete one section, it takes them to another one. Google Drawings, much like Canva, it's very graphic. Docs and slides, they are very similar when it comes to what you can put in them. Google Sites, which is just, you know, a website, but you can package everything there. And Google My Maps, which you may not have used before, but like I couldn't get anywhere if it was not for Google Maps and Waze. But Google has something called My Maps that allows you to utilize the power of Google Maps and do custom maps. So it's almost like a big virtual trip. So some really clever ideas on using that. So no matter what the tool, you need to know some basics. And so this may be way too basic for some of you that are pros, but I do want to talk about these steps, because if you understand these steps, you can create a hyperdoc, or you can recreate or remix a hyperdoc. So I'm going to click on my not so awesome hyperdoc here. And this is kind of just, if I was going to create a hyperdoc from scratch, I would just take some notes so that I know what I needed to do. So the first thing I would do, and this is on a document, is change the background color. So if you've never done that before, you simply go to File and you scroll down to Page Setup. And here where all of this stuff is, you've got page color. So I want to make this look prettier. So I'm going to go with this little yellow color. Boom. Now I have brightened up the page. It doesn't feel like a stark piece of paper that they have to type onto. So that part is done. So I'm going to get rid of that. Boom. Title, My Awesome Hyperdoc on Technology. And so I'm going to play around with the font. And here I'm just going to go in here. I'm going to make it bold. I'm going to add a new fancy font. If you don't like the fonts that are here, you can go to More Fonts. And then there's a fabulous add-on if you want to check this out called Extensis Fonts. And this will give you all the cool fonts. And evidently I have to update mine. Once you add that add-on, and it's there forever. So once you've done that, and you can get add-ons in the little Google store, you can go through here and find the coolest fonts. Unfortunately, it's not searchable, but if I really find a font that I like, the way it works is that I select my text, and then I go in here and I find a really cool font like this one that I want to use. And once I click it, it changes the font. And so for this one, obviously, I'm going to make this font quite a bit bigger. And I'm going to center it. And I don't know, maybe that's a little too big. So we go 40. There we go. Boom. So now I have this kind of creative font there. So I'm going to get rid of all of this. Now I'm going to add a picture of a computer disk. So all I'm doing is just going through the steps. If I was going to start from scratch, what kinds of things do I want on there? What I love about Google Docs is it allows me to search the web. All right, so for people that are my age, you know what a computer disk is. Kids, probably not. But I can insert an image there of a computer disk. This one is really too big, so I'm just gonna make that smaller. And I'm gonna say wrap text. Okay, so now I've gotten that, and you can see how you can just go through here and start the process of this hyperdoc. I want to add a video on technology integration. I go up here to insert, and I'm going to choose a video. I'm going to choose a link where I want to insert a video. And so I can look up my YouTube video, and I can add the link right here and hyperlink out to a video. Questions on a Google form. So I can link to a Google form. So if you know how to use this hyperlink tool, then you can link out to pretty much anything. And then I've already added, you know, some articles that I want my students to answer questions. So I can use Insert Learning. That's a great tool that allows them to answer questions. You can highlight, you can do a lot there. Here's a TED Ed lesson that I want them to look at. All that is in the Explore and the Explain phase. Now I'm gonna have them apply, create a podcast or make a video explaining how technology is advancing in your lifetime. So I would decide, what am I gonna have them use? Maybe it's Flipgrid. Maybe it is Voxer or Podcast-O-Matic. So I don't have to know all these technology tools, but if I'm thinking about what do I want them to use to create, I'm going to need to be familiar with that tool at the end. A lot of times you're going to see people using tables in hyperdocs. And you can change the color of a table cell, and it makes it super creative to have all of these colors. So all you do is you are going to right click and do your table properties, and then you can change the cell color on that particular table. So all of these things will give you a really unique looking hyperdoc when it comes to just using Google Docs. So inserting a hyperlink, website, video, other document, inserting images, and then making cosmetic changes, and then more advanced, making a table and coloring those cells. The benefit to a table is that you can also have a section where the students write. So a hyperdoc could be something that when you're putting it in Google Classroom, you say make a copy for each student, and they have an area where you're expecting them to type in their information. Now, you can do it in a document. You can also do it in Google Slides. And so some of the things you're going to do in Google Slides that is a little bit easier than in Docs is that you have all these insert options like video and audio that you can search. And then also this color bucket is a really good way to add some color to your slideshow. And so you can use the more fonts option to get different fonts. You can select any text box and use this fill color and change the color of that box. That's a real simple change that you can do. And then you can use Bitmoji to add some fun and entertainment. Now, if you've not used Bitmoji, I don't want you to go look for it now because I'll lose you for hours. But it is an app. So first and foremost, if you want to use Bitmoji, you would need to get the app on your phone or your tablet and create your little avatar. Once you've created your avatar, then you can add the Bitmoji Chrome extension. And by doing that, it gives you access to all of your Bitmoji's little poses and looks. So I can simply put in the word pose and find all of these cute little Bitmoji poses. And if I like one of them with Google Docs and Slides, I can simply drag the Bitmoji onto the slideshow. Notice she has updated her clothing since the last Bitmoji there. And I can then move that Bitmoji around. This is just a lot of fun. It adds some engagement to your slides. And just like I said on the previous slide there, is that when you go to insert, you can insert an image by searching for it or using something you have here, or the good old insert with a camera feature, which I love. And then you've also got the ability to insert YouTube videos and search for them right here in your slideshow. So I want us to look at some examples of hyperdocs. And notice out to the side, I gave you examples of the learning cycle that each of these use. So this first one, Johnny Appleseed, we're going to look at that one. And you can see they have inserted an image. They've put a table here, and they've used images to engage students. This is the explore portion, And here's the student task. In this picture, I see, and then it gives the students an opportunity to type. Now, this one is not editable right now, but this picture makes me think, and they would answer that question. And then look at the hyperlinks. This is all still in the explore stage. Click here to listen to a story, click here to read, click here to watch a video, click here to read. Then you have an area for the students to answer some questions. Moving along to the explain stage, 2 more links. Read or listen, and then listen. And then you've got them answering a question to prove that they actually listened. And now we're in the apply stage, and they have been given a task. Notice the task is in Google Draw. So obviously this teacher has worked with the students on Google Draw. They know how to do that. Or in person, she's going to give them some instructions on how to use Google Draw. And then she tells them, make sure you click save and close when you're done. And so that is it. Very simple, 2 pages, colorful, easy to read, and easy to understand. This next one would be for older kids. Notice it's a much longer learning cycle, as it should be. Discover, learn, explore, wonder, explain. It goes through all of that. An introduction to biomes. This one is a 3rd grade hyperdoc. Notice they use that background color. Then they left their table white, so it really stands out. They even use some little icons here to say that this is a video. And then they have a expedition. And see, it says teachers search for biomes in Google Expeditions. So this is kind of, as the teacher, you can see that this is one that you would remix. And so you're using videos in Google Expeditions. And then they have this, which could be hyperlinked. Click to learn about the different biomes. Probably this is just a screenshot of where the students will be going. Now the explore phase. This is a thing link. Remember I mentioned thing link is a map or a picture or something that has been hyperlinked. Now the wonder phase. After learning some things about this, think about a question you want answered. And they have a Padlet, which is a collaboration. Extend the learning looking at this chart. And so very simple, few pages using those tricks. Now we look at a couple of them that are with slides. This one is on tornadoes. Now it looks very short. It's just one slide. You need to be in the present mode to get the full effect. So they use the explore, explain, apply, and they click here, and it takes me out to another Google image. What does this map make you wonder? So I would say my only criticism of this is, you know, is there a digital place for them to put this? It says discuss with the partners. This would be for in person, but you could easily link it to a document, a note-taking document or a discussion document from here. Explain, clicks, takes them out to a Google Doc, and this one does that. It has jot notes, place for you to add some notes. And so here is, watch this. Notice that this is it says required there, so there's like a Google form with images and videos in it. Write down a question, click on the link below. And so I know this is a Google form because it's got required questions and a submit button at the bottom. So that's paying attention to that workflow. And then the last one is apply. And this one goes out to another Google document. This one is utilizing the background color, thing link. Again, you're creating a thing link and it tells you what the expectations are. So that one was one slide, but each slide linked out to 3 different documents or slides or forms. And then this one is Inquiry PD, engage, explain, explore, apply, share, reflect. So it's got a much bigger one. And this one is a full slideshow. The beauty of Google Slides is you can not just link out to documents, but you can link to other slides in the presentation. And so with this one, I would just click through And this is the engage phase. There's a video. What is our purpose? 15 minutes to explore, and then they have some things for you to read. Fill out the inquiry action sheet. When you go there, it asks you to make a copy of this, and this is actually for professional development, which I think is interesting because I think it would be a great tool to use in a faculty meeting or in a grade level meeting, having teachers to go through a hyperdoc. So look at this. Do this. Here's an example. Now your turn. So it's like a hyperdoc to another hyperdoc. Discuss with a partner. If you're add your inquiry focus here, discuss with the group. This is perfect for that blended learning situation. So those are some examples for you to think about when you're creating a hyperdoc. But this is an old commercial from the 80s, and I just put a little GIF of it here because I say all of the time that I like to find a shortcut. So this commercial is where she's been making Rice Krispie treats, and she's really been like reading a romance novel and just doing whatever she wanted to do. And then she puts the flour in the water to make it look like she's worked really hard before she takes the Rice Krispie treats out to her family. This is only hard if you don't know how to cheat. And the best way to do it is find an example to copy and remix for your lesson. So here's what I mean by doing that. And I'm going to take just a minute and I'm going to stop sharing just so that I can kind of check on the chat. So how do you hyperdoc from one slide to another? So when it comes to Google Slides, when you choose the link option in slides, you have the option to link a slide to another slide in the presentation. And it will list, if you choose another slide in the presentation, it'll list slide 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You can also link out to any other document that you currently have in Drive. And I'll demonstrate that in just a second if it wasn't clear. But for those of you that have used hyperdocs before, if you don't mind, drop in the chat what tool did you use to package your hyperdocs? Is it Google Docs or Slides, or did you use PowerPoint? For those of you that have experienced using hyperdocs, put that into the chat. I am going to answer Dave's question as well on linking something from one slide to another. All right, so I'm going to take a minute and talk about the hyperlinking part. So if I wanted to link this word, hyperlink, to something else, I can click on the link there and it's going to open up, well, you know, if you don't scroll away from it, it is going to open up this drop-down box. Now, you'll notice that I have the opportunity to just paste a link or search right here. I also have the option slides in this presentation. This is a unique feature of Google Slides. So I can hyperlink back to the first slide. A lot of times teachers will use this by putting like a little house icon, and that house icon links back to the first slide. So that's like taking you home each time. So you can link to any other slides. I'm going to choose first slide for that word. Then I'm going to do hyperlink again. And notice it gives me slides in the presentation. It also gives me some other options. But then I have other things from my Google Drive that are listed. So let's say that I know the name of the document from my Google Drive. So I am just going to list, I'm going to type in Flipgrid because I just created some documents and some presentations on Flipgrid. And there is another slideshow that lives in my Drive right now that I could easily click, and it is going to go to that. So I'm going to show you what happened. If I click on this link, it takes me back to my first slide. Okay, so that one worked beautifully. If I go back here in present mode and I click on this, it should take me to my other presentation. So anything that lives in your Google Drive can be linked to anything in a document or anything in Google Slides. And that really was kind of the game changer for utilizing Google Slides and Google Docs to package hyperdocs, is because you can link to anything that you currently have. So if you built it or someone else built it, if it's a quiz, a form, a document, anything that lives in Drive, you can link to it. All right, so this is a very important slide. So I put on here, come back to this slide, because it is going to become very important to you. And that is, first of all, you're going to want to go to the HyperDocs Academy website. And you're going to want to create an account. It is free to create an account. If you want to learn more about HyperDocs, they have some free, at least free for right now, courses that you can go through that teach you the ins and outs of HyperDocs, and they are well worth your time. So I'm going to start by clicking on this link and taking you to the HyperDocs Academy. If it looks familiar, when I accidentally clicked on the cover of the book from like slide 3 or 4, it took me here as well. And so this is HyperDocs Academy. It has just been revamped. It used to be, it used to look very different than this. And so I'm just going to hopefully sign in. Yep. And, ooh, let's see. Yeah. So I can go in here and I can change my picture, my profile, and everything. And there we go. And so I can do all of that if I want to. Notice my account is free. And so I'm going to go back here just to this web page. And so look at the Get Started tab. It's saying it's not about teaching technology. It's about using technology to teach. And there's the 3 ways to start with HyperDocs. So here's some great ideas there. The About tab is going to tell you a little bit about the authors of the book and how it all got started. And then you can go to Find and actually find templates and samples. So if you go to Templates, you'll see a basic HyperDoc lesson. Now, here's why I say that this is the reason why HyperDocs has blown up. It's the same reason why teachers love Kahoot, because I don't have to go in and create a brand new Kahoot to use in my classroom. I can simply find one in the gallery that actually works for my class. Well, HyperDocs is very similar. You don't have to know all the fancy tools to make your HyperDoc look amazing. There are a lot of templates out there that allow you to just drop your content in. And here's an example of a free template. Now, you do not want to request edit access ever. You are going to want to go over here to File and make a copy. So be sure that you understand that when people put templates and HyperDocs out and they're willing to share them, your job is to make a copy of that and then utilize it. So that's one of the templates. There are tons of other templates and samples where you can go and get information here. Courses on remote teaching. I took that one the other day. I really liked it. There's information about their book, their blog, and other things. So that would be step 1, is I would encourage you to go and create an account with their website. Second, join the HyperDocs Facebook group. What I love about this Facebook group is that people often will ask questions and say, hey, does anyone have a HyperDoc on the book, The Outsiders? And once they do, people start sharing. and it is amazing. So here's just a simple one an hour ago that was shared, a choice board that I made for 7th graders at the end of the year. And you can simply click on it and file, make a copy. Okay, so I love the fact that people are willing to share. Once I make a copy of it, it puts it in my drive, and now I have an editable copy to modify and use however I want. Okay, so that's just one example of the many examples that are shared on this Facebook group. And all it is I just looked up hyperdocs under groups, and I found this group and I asked to join. Whoops. Search Pinterest for hyperdocs boards. Only if you have lots of time on your hands, because that is a rabbit hole that you cannot come back from. I love some of the things that are shared on Pinterest, but I guarantee you about half of them are teachers pay teachers. But there are lots that are shared completely free for you to do just what I did, which was make a copy. Start with a basic hyperdoc template like this one. And this is the one that I got from the Hyperdocs Academy. And so this is a very simple one that you could easily drop your information into. Or start with a shorter one like this: explore, explain, apply. Notice that they have the tasks on the other side. This is similar to that Johnny Appleseed one that we looked at. Or this one in slides. So if you're a much bigger fan of the freedom you have for slides, which I really love what opportunities you have with slides, is that notice that this one has the steps up there in the top corner, and you can go in here and drop your information. If you don't want to use this particular one, then you can use any of these other ones and change out everything. All you have to do is make a copy of it and start linking things. Or remix any of them that you find that you really like. And so here's the key to remixing. I just talked about it. First, you have to sign into your Google account, and you're going to want to choose make a copy. The other option is, if you're a big fan of using Microsoft Word or PowerPoint, you can download anything that is currently in Google. You can download it as a Word document or as a PowerPoint. Most all of the links that they may have in there will come over when you make that conversion. You may lose some of the fancy fonts and things, but many times people are going to customize that anyway. I have an example here for you to remix if you want to. And this is a really cute one called My Superhero. So if you wanted to practice, you can do file and make a copy. And so notice this one has a podcast, a video, something to read. And then it's got a place for some ideas for them to put in each of these, and then a place to share and to reflect. Do not request edit access. I can't say that enough. Don't request edit access because you're not going to get it. All right, so remixing, make a copy, change the share settings so that it's anyone with a link if you're going to share this outside of your class. So be sure you address the share settings for the document depending on how you're going to be sharing it out. Check all of the links. So if you decide, hey, this one is exactly the subject that I teach, I don't need to do anything to it, you need to check all the links. Sometimes the links go specifically to a document that is locked up in that person's domain. So it is meant for you to create your own document to link there. So be sure the links are age appropriate, that they work, and that if it's to like a Padlet, that you've created your own Padlet or your own document for your students to take notes on. Also, in checking the links, make sure everything you link to has the correct sharing settings so that students can access it. Revise and edit to fit the needs of your students. Check the wording. Consider the workflow. Like one of them that we looked at that said discuss with a partner. That's not applicable if we're not at school. So be sure that you think about that. And then give credit to the original author. So I like to tell people to do remixed by at the bottom, just because. Thank you for giving us free stuff. So most helpful templates are going to at least give you ideas. I love this one. It has explanations of each step. So notice here, it tells you, insert your own image, put your lesson objective here. The Explore section should have links to videos, articles, images, and this gives you links to images. So notice this, if I go to this images link and I click on it, you're gonna find this Padlet filled with sites that have copyright-free images for you or for your students to use. So that's just a great resource for you to use when you're working on your hyperdocs. Same thing with videos, articles, and then they give you some possible technology resources and then some ideas on having your students complete each of these segments. So there's the explore, the explain step, and the apply and share step, and some possible ideas for that. So that's a really good template to help you out. And then this one, this template of tech tools rocks. If you're looking to kind of stretch yourself and utilize a different tool. So here's some ideas on how you might engage your students. Podcast, an image, a meme. How about that? They love memes and GIFs and things like that. So how could you engage them? And then links to all the stuff that you could use. The explore, the explain stage, the apply stage. Look how many ways students could apply their knowledge. And then the share stage, reflect and extend. I mean, there is probably not a tool that you can think of that's not somehow on this list. So I really, really love that. So Marie asked a great question. How do you share with kids and keep them from editing it? So that is a more complicated question than this particular workshop. When it comes to slides, you can create some templates that students can type into by saving it as an image and then uploading it back into the slide as a background. And that keeps them from manipulating it. When it comes to docs, that's a little more challenging, but you can create some tables that they can type into, but there's no guarantee that they won't manipulate the tables. So the other option is just having it set so that it's view only for them and then linking out to documents that they type into if you are worried that they cannot stay within the constraints of that table. So when it comes to your younger kids, that may be part of an issue there. I don't know if that fully answered the question. So here are just these following slides are just some tools and some examples of how you might use those tools and in each of these steps. And so this is just more resources than you will ever need. It takes you through all of that. So I talked a lot and I really did want to give more time for questions. So I am going to just talk for just a second more about this final assignment. So what I want you to do is create or remix a hyperdoc. You can use whatever tool you choose. Now I'm aware that I just sent you a whole lot of hyperdocs, and am I going to know if you totally just pass one off as your own? Well, probably not. But I do have some requirements here that I'm going to be looking for. So at the very least, if you remix one, hopefully you're going to consider that you have these requirements. I would like for it to be the grade in the subject you teach. So we want this assignment to be something that's useful for you. So think of a topic that you will be teaching next year so that you can actually utilize this hyperdoc in your class. It must contain the following: a clear learning cycle. So it could be simple, it could be 3 steps, 5 steps, whatever. Areas for student response and reflection. Either it can be on the slide or the document itself, or it can link out to a note-taking page, a Padlet, or something where they can respond. Links to at least 3 related videos. So whatever the topic is, you would need to search for some videos, or if you are one of those teachers that made some explanation videos for your students, I would love for you to link one of your videos in it as well. At least 3 images, so some images relating to your topic. And I would like for you to use at least 2 different technology tools to support the learning. So you had a whole menu there of technology tools. So if you're already used to Screencastify, maybe you are assigning the students to do a Screencastify. If you use Seesaw, maybe Seesaw is going to be a place for them to respond. So at least 2 different tools, not counting the tool you used to create the document. It would need to be a tool the students are going to use. And then at least a link out to one other document or slideshow. So like I showed you earlier, you're going to use that link option and then choose something that lives in your drive or another slideshow. So something outside of how it is packaged. And what you're going to do is you're going to submit it to me in a Google form. And let me show you what that looks like. And I'm going to move this out of the way. Will it take me? There we go. So I have this final assignment upload. So email address, first name, last name, that's just asking who you are. You have 2 choices. You can either upload your final assignment here. So you can upload the Google Doc, the Microsoft Word document, the PowerPoint, slideshow, whatever. You can download it and upload it here. Or if you know how to share and you give me the right permissions, you can share it just by sharing the link here, and make sure the permissions say anyone with the link. So let me just show you what I mean. And I'm going to go to my ATM domain so it looks similar to what yours would look like in a school domain. And I am going to grab something that probably does not have the right sharing settings. So let's look at this. So if I was going to share this as my hyperdoc, notice when I hover over the share button, it says private to only me. Now, I was mentioning this to my other groups. This sharing window is relatively new. It has a new look to it. And for me, it has thrown me over the last 2 weeks. So I just want you to be familiar with what the sharing window looks like. For me, it is restricted, and probably for you, it is restricted. It says only people I add can open with this link. If yours is like that, I need for you to change it. So click on change, and notice that I have an option here, anyone with the link. If you do not have that option so that it is public to share with me, if you only have your school district listed, then you may need to download it and upload it rather than share it with the link. Otherwise, I may not get it because I use so many different Google accounts. So choose anyone with a link and then copy that link and then go back here and paste that link right there. It's all going to dump into a spreadsheet for me. And that's just going to be an easier way for me to document that you've completed it and go through and look at it as well. So hopefully that is not too terribly confusing. And I definitely need you to fill out this attendance document now. So I know I told you that you'd be jumping through a few hoops. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen now. But if you will go to that attendance document and fill that out, then it is going to help me a lot because I'm going to be double checking attendance with that. And I'm going to quickly drop that link into the chat too, in case you are having issues with it. So please be sure that you mark attendance on here, and this is how I will be checking along with the chat and along with our PowerSchool roster. Whew, okay, lots of talking. We have a few minutes left. If anyone would like to ask a question, drop it in the chat or unmute your mic, or even unmute your video camera and show me your face. Let me know you're still here. Any questions or thoughts or whatever? If you are a hyperdoc person and you're like, I have an idea, just shout it out.
Thanks for the all those templates. I know I'll be using them. That's super, super helpful for me.
Awesome. The question was, how long do we have to submit this to me? By Friday. I just want to give you a few days while it's fresh on your mind to get that done. By Friday would be great. That way I can kind of close out attendance and everything on that. By the end of the week will be what I'm shooting for. Just a little shameless plug. If you go to atium.us, you can access information about our virtual summit that's coming up. You can still sign up for that if you're interested in some more sessions. Are you available to answer questions after this session? I will stay on here for, I'm going to take a quick bathroom break, and then I'll stay on here for a few more minutes if you have some questions. Can you share the attendance link again? Yes, ma'am. And there it is. Oh, well, that was not, I sent it privately. Hold on. Let me try that again. All right. All right. Yes, if you need to email me, I have several emails, but the easiest one to reach me at is this one, bcaldwell1@jsu.edu. So you can definitely ask me questions through email or email me. Yes, Dave, there was an attendance link for the training yesterday. When will we get the recording in case we need help? I should have it uploaded today, and I'm going to be going into PowerSchool and emailing everyone from yesterday and today recording links, but it may be like 4 o'clock this afternoon before I get all of that finished. All right. Well, if nobody has any questions, thank you so much for coming, and I hope you have a great rest of your day. And I'm going to cut off the recording.